give empathy by focusing on the feelings and needs of the other person. And that has a huge impact, because that is where the connection then really starts to have a certain quality, where the other person is more than willing to do something for you in return. And so this is what I would say, but it takes practice to be able to do that. And you have to genuinely really want to do this. So it will not work if you do this.
Blessed love and respect, champion. What's the worst that you've ever had? Mine was waking up one day realizing that I had so much to offer the world, but because of the lack of time, poor energy, and a shitty focus, I failed to do so. Sounds familiar? Hopefully this isn't you. But can I tell you a secret? If you're not practicing these secrets, you'll be in the same position as I was. I want to share with you what I've been learning about the world's most accomplished and influential leaders, so that you can become better at mastering your mind, body, and ability to be more productive and persuasive. I realize that no one is telling the real story of leadership, where there's more downs than there is ups. And this podcast is for creative, high-impact leaders who would like to achieve their highest level of performance, so that we can 10x the positive impact we are making in the world. Together, let us make leadership sexy by leveling up into our highest performing self, mastering all 6 secrets of the world's highest performing leaders. But the real question is, how do we do it? Join me on a journey to self-mastery as I share with you the stories of the world's highest performing leaders to help you live a more purposeful and fulfilled life. This is Dino Delplesh, your high performance coach, and it's time to level up. Blessed love and respect, champion. Now, today we have leveling up with us is Tilman Rieger. I hope I pronounced the last name correct, but he'll correct me on that. And just to give you a bit about who Tilman is an executive coach and leadership trainer with a focus on interpersonal communication, conflict management, leadership, and collaboration. He has been the HR director at General Motors Europe, overseeing over 3,000 employees in Europe while driving major change and restructuring. And today he lives and works in China for more than 7 years and is the founder and CEO of 8C Consulting, supporting his client to communicate, collaborate, and lead more effectively. Welcome to the Level Up Show, Tilman. It's really a pleasure to be finally talking with you today. And I'm just really excited about this conversation and can't wait to see what comes up. Welcome.
Thank you, Daniel, and I'm also really excited to be on your show.
So let me start with this. It's very incredible what you have done. You have multiple years ahead of me, transitioning from an executive position, where you're managing such a big team, to being an entrepreneur where you're running your own show. Tell me a bit about that story and how did that all begin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was maybe I start from the very start when I was born. I was born in Chicago. I'm an ABG-LIC, American-born German living in China.
Wow, that's the first time I'm hearing that one. Noted.
Yeah. So born in Chicago, but with 5 years, I moved to Germany. My parents moved to Germany. They're both German. So I already had a bit of this international flair in my blood and my DNA at the time. And when I was studying in Germany, I was also then studying in London for a year. And during this year in London, I realized how great it is to be in an international environment. And I enjoyed it so much. And I loved this big city with the endless opportunities. And that was something that I wanted to have again while working. As a student, you don't have much money, and London is very expensive. So I couldn't really enjoy it as much. And then in the time, then after I returned from London, I finished studying and started my first job at General Motors in Germany. So General Motors Europe, it was Opel, the brand car brand Opel. And I was working in a plant, and I was from day one on actually telling everyone I want to be sent abroad to another country. So please think of me whenever there is a chance. And after 7 years, they finally heard my
Oh,
my
wow.
pressing, and I then was sent to Zurich, to
Oh,
Switzerland, which was just next door. And
yeah.
I thought it was great, but it was not as exotic as I hoped it to be. After these 2 years in Zurich, I was then sent back to Germany and started working there as an HR manager for Chevrolet Germany for 2 years, and then got promoted to become HR director for General Motors Europe for the sales, marketing, after sales function. And that was a huge step. I was first responsible for 70 people and then for 3,000. And that was the
Oh,
time
wow.
when I thought I need a coach. I reached out to a coach, and while I was having the coaching, I realized what the coach was doing was something I could imagine myself to be doing in the future. And that was where it all started, to think of becoming a coach. And after I worked at in that position, and I finally I realized that it was just not something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I wanted to become a coach, and I wanted to fulfill that dream of mine to live and work in a big city outside of Germany in an international environment. So I quit my job at General Motors and traveled through Asia for 3 months, decided Shanghai is the place where I
Oh,
want to live in
wow.
the future, returned to Germany and started to prepare for one entire year. So I had a gap year of 1.5 years. And in this 1 year, I was doing then a coaching training, a training in the field of compassionate communication or nonviolent communication and mediation. So altogether, 600 hours of investment into myself. And I was learning about the cross-cultural differences with China, and then preparing to go to China, having some trips over here to do some networking. And yeah, in 2015, I then started. I came over here 1 year after this gap year, and started as a cross-cultural consultant for a German consultancy. Work part-time, and part-time I could work as a freelance coach. And yeah, and after 1 year, I realized I want to do more for the language. I stopped working, went to Kunming to study 6 months as a to study Chinese for 6 months full time at university. Returned, continued my job, and then 3 years ago, I started my own company as a consultant, coach, trainer, facilitator, and work in that field of interpersonal communication and leadership, collaboration, conflict management.
Wow, incredible. It's really extraordinary the amount of due diligence you did before you actually made that move. You know, it's like all that work went on in the background. That's a lot that a lot didn't see, that a lot of people won't be seeing. And I heard you mention, you know, when you move from managing a 70 team to a 3,000 team, you identify that you needed to get a coach. What really brought that awareness? What made you realize you needed a coach at that point as a leader?
Yeah, because when you are overseeing in HR, if you're overseeing 70 people, you can really do a lot of things manually. You're much more hands-on, and you're also not in such a political environment. And when I was then promoted to that position where I was overseeing 3,000 people across Europe and not on site 70 people, I realized that this is a very different way of working. And that was where I said, I need to have a coach to help me with that transition, to understand and reflect. What do I have to do differently? I had to work much more strategically, and I had to work much more virtually, and I had to deal with much more politics. I was just 2 steps away from the CEO of General Motors, so I had much more pressure. There was a very different environment for me, and it was a very high intense restructuring time, cost reductions, hiring freeze, and yeah, very intense time. So I thought that's where I needed a coach.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And let me ask you this: what was really the catalyst that inspired you to now move from General Motors and become a coach and consultant yourself? What was that catalyst?
Yes, I think it was that I realized that my talents are in the interpersonal communication, and I wanted to pursue this path of doing really where I'm really good at. That was, I think, one aspect. The other one was I wanted to see the world. I wanted to live in this vibrating environment, international environment of a big city. That was attracting me. And yeah, it was also maybe a bit of courage that I always had that made me take that step. So I think I have a generally optimistic and courageous way of looking at life. So I was taking a step at the beginning of my 40s that very few people would have done. I left everything behind. I went to China with 6 suitcases without knowing if it would work out. And it worked out really well. And I have no regrets. I found my wife here. And I'm really happy with that decision that I took at the time. And with the job I'm doing, I love what I'm doing. And
Awesome.
So it's really great.
Yeah. You know, it's one thing to see where you are now and really admire that. And I heard, you know, courage keep coming up because of course it's gonna take a lot of courage to leave such a position. You're more or less, you were second to the CEO of such a big company, and to leave, going on your own and creating your own space, that must have been super scary. Like what were the major challenges you had to overcome going through that transition?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when I look back to the time when I arrived and I had no clue really about Chinese, and I was so much more helpless, also just because of less technology support. I mean, WeChat was just about to get started, and there were no mobiles. There was the China of then was different than it is now. And I had no support with anyone helping me other than building up my own network quickly. And I knew that I could rely on my network. And I think that is something that why I was so courageous to do this, because I knew if there's something I know how to do, then it's networking. And when I came here for the second time during my gap year, it was for one entire month. And I told myself, in this month, I will do full-time networking. Every day I go somewhere and meet people, go to Chamber of Commerce meetings, go to whatever meeting there is to meet people. And that then brought me to, I found my job there, and I met many people that were willing to support me once I arrived. And when I arrived, I had people that supported me. And that was, that was how I managed it. But I realized I was very helpless without any basic Chinese. So this was also why I then said, okay, I want to stay here for longer and not just for 2-3 years. So it's worthwhile making the investment now. So after this first year, I froze my job for a while and went studying. And I'm not, without that, I would not have been able to meet my wife, who doesn't speak English.
Oh, wow.
So I have to speak Chinese every day.
Awesome, amazing,
Now
man. I
she's
gotta
learned
give that to
German.
you.
Yeah.
That's courage is really playing stuff well for you. If I really look at how things has played out. Awesome. And I love the fact that you mentioned, you know, really investing in your network. I know it might sound a bit cliche because we've been hearing this phrase a lot. Your network is your net worth. But what advice would you give someone who is going through this transition for the first time in terms of building their network? What advice would you give to them?
I would say that what is really important is that you don't do it on a superficial level, but try to connect. Let's say you go to an event and you meet one person who you think is interesting, and you try to connect really deeply with that person. And you don't go from one person to the next and just give your name card to them and do this mass distribution of name cards. I always try to connect with people on a deeper level, but fewer, but then quality connection. And that involved to give them empathy and to really listen. And this is like the saying goes, like, try to be interested and not interesting. And that's something that I try to follow. And at least to be interested first, and then afterwards interesting when they were willing to listen to what I had to say. So it is important that you go deeper and not superficially run this networking.
That's powerful, and that's priceless advice. And I love a lot of what you said. And I'm really big in NLP, so I'm really big on the internal processes. So I really want to get a bit deeper on this idea of deep connection. When you're at a networking event and you are there connecting with someone and you really want to connect deeply, what's going on the inside for you, Tilman? Walk me through that.
Yeah, so what I try to do is to listen between the lines when someone says something and try to find out and sense what the other person is feeling and what their needs are. And then I give that back, or I paraphrase and
Now, if you're listening to this show, I believe it's because you are ready to take your performance to another level. And that is why I've created this show as a program in my high performance leader coaching ecosystem to help you master these high performance habits with accountability, structure, and guidance from me as your coach. And it is free for you today as my listener. Join my high performance leader coaching ecosystem right now. Go to levelupwithdino.com. Again, go to levelupwithdino.com. And Dino is spelled D-E-A-N-O. And if you're listening to this in China or you're watching an episode on YouTube, just click the link in the description below. And remember, it is time for you to level up.
Give empathy by focusing on the feelings and needs of the other person. And that has a huge impact, because that is where the connection then really starts to have a certain quality, where the other person is more than willing to do something for you in return. And so this is what I would say, but it takes practice to be able to do that. And you have to genuinely really want to do this. So it will not work if you do this as a strategy and to be manipulative. You really have to do this from your heart. And if you really like that person, or you really try to see what do you like about that person, and you focus on that you like at that person, what you can appreciate, then the other person can feel that and can feel that connection. And that is where the other person opens up and is more than willing to do something for you if you then ask for a small favor.
Yeah, that's totally true. I totally do agree with that. I remember my first time reading this book from Andrew Carnegie. I hope that's the correct author, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I can remember one of his advice was to be more interested in the other person than you are in yourself. And at first, that seemed quite challenging for me, And then I can remember reading on, and then the author said to look for things in the person that you find interesting. You don't have to be interested in every single thing about them, but find the things that you're interested in about them and genuinely, express that. And I start practicing doing that. At first, it was a bit rigid, a bit difficult. But as you said, as you practice it, it becomes easier. And then I start enjoy literally being interested in people. And you're right, when you're really genuinely interested in people, that interest is being reciprocated, which is totally powerful.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Tilman. Let's say we had a time machine right now, and you had to step into that time machine, and we went back to that time just before you leave General Motor. What would you have done differently?
I think I would have probably invested more time into Chinese. I
Mm,
think that is really the one thing that is holding me back more now than I would like to. If my Chinese would have been on a different level,
mm,
or is on a different level now, would be on a different level now, I could do more things and
mm,
I would have an easier life. So even though I studied Chinese for 6 months and I have a wife who doesn't speak English, it's still not at the level where I can really use it in a meaningful way at work. And that
mm,
is that's something I would have loved to have done differently. That is probably the one thing I can think of. Otherwise, I think many of the things just fell in place the right way.
mhm,
And I think there's also a magic sometimes when you're at the
mm,
right place doing the right thing,
yeah.
that you have a lot of very interesting encounters of
Mm,
people where you could just can't imagine that this is true. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Where you meet people that that bring you to the next step. And so looking back, actually, I thought of that always about like maybe I should have stayed another 6 months more in Kunming to study Chinese. That would have been
Mm,
good. But then I
mm,
know that in these 6 months, when I was back in Shanghai, there were some very important encounters I had that led me to where I am today. And without those, today it would be very different for me. So
mm.
I believe that whatever you do is then the right thing.
Yeah, wow, that's powerful. I love the fact that you said magic and things falling into place. You know, it's really important to have faith that things would work out for you. Yeah, and I see that that's something that you apply, you know, in the way how you approach life as well, which is really beautiful. You mentioned the word easy. Yeah, and now my next question would be, what are some resources or tools you have that makes life easier for you?
Okay, so one of the things that I applied really from the very start while I came to China, or when I came to China, was, and it's meanwhile known, at least in the coaching field, and more people know that, this gratitude exercise.
Mm.
So I was doing a gratitude journaling for 4 years consecutive, every day, three
Oh,
things
wow.
that I wrote down that I was grateful for, and every day, three different things. And not
Mm.
only writing down the three things, but also why I'm grateful for them. So
Mm.
it has to go a little bit further than that.
Yeah.
That really helped me to stay on course in the maybe first year that was more challenging, because of all the moments where I just did not know how to handle things. Um, then I would say the optimistic attitude towards life definitely helped me a lot in general.
Mm.
So just believing that everything has a deeper meaning, that there's always a gift and an opportunity in any challenge.
Mm.
And with that deep belief, I was also being able to, yeah, endure the harder times. Um, and at the same time, I have to say, I was so excited by the environment of China because I really felt that is exactly where I would always wanted to be, in this environment where there's so many international people, and you find so many interesting people.
Mm.
And yeah, the opportunities are endless. So I was so inspired by that I I felt like there was a honeymoon phase of 1 year, whereas
Mm.
most people say the honeymoon phase is just 6 weeks, typically in a cross culture setting.
Oh, wow.
But I kind of
Yeah.
prolonged it.
Mm. Yeah. What I'm starting to learn about you is that, you know, you have mastered the art of generating that feeling. You know, you mentioned gratitude, and one of my personal experience with gratitude of keeping a journal, you know, we can be grateful for things by writing and being aware of it, but then coming to a place where you start to feel how that feels, to be grateful for that which you're grateful for. And I like that you really mentioned, like, why are you grateful for these things? Yeah, and that really tapped into that realm of feelings. And I know there's a lot of leaders who haven't even tried done things like this before and can be really skeptical because they're not seeing the return on investment. What would you have to say to a listener like that?
Yeah, and actually, you know, I said I did that for 4 years. Now I'm not doing this anymore. Why? Because I already it became part of my DNA. So I have this feeling of gratitude all the time.
Awesome.
And I express that spontaneously all the time to my wife. She loves that. She loves to hear that. And I do this just it comes up, I feel it, and then I express it.
Wow.
And I just become aware in many moments how grateful I can be for what I have. And then I just express it. And it gives me a good feeling. It gives the people around me a good feeling when I share that. So it's so easy. It doesn't cost anything. It just costs some awareness. It's about building up the awareness.
Yeah. And what
I
would you
even
say?
recently did
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just said there was one time I did a test from the positive, and there was a positive psychology website called Via Characters, where you could find out what are your biggest strengths.
Yeah.
And I found out, and my biggest strength was gratitude.
Oh, wow.
So, and I think it was because of training that muscle for such a long time. And yeah, so you can really build that up, that mindset.
Wonderful. And what are some of your favorite books that you would like to recommend to our listeners today?
Yeah, well, I love listening to books, I have to say. There are many books that I rather listen to than read them. And there are some that I would recommend, especially for listening. So one of the evergreens that I definitely would recommend is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Also very good to listen to because spoken by the author, Stephen Covey. Another book that is down my alley is Nonviolent Communication, written by Marshall Rosenberg and also spoken by Marshall Rosenberg. And one book that I recently listened to that I also loved a lot and is very inspiring is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And it's also fantastic as an audiobook because it's actually a mix of an audiobook and a podcast. So his ghostwriter is speaking, reading that one chapter, and then after the chapter, he's chatting with David Goggins about this one chapter. And it's an amazing story. And David Goggins is just a crazy guy who has achieved so much that is beyond imagination. So very inspiring. And there are so many more books that I really love. I mean, one of the books that I would say is also a very influential book that I also listened to in the time when I came to China is A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And it's a spiritual book, always about being the here and now. But it requires to have a certain level of awareness to understand it. And I experienced that with my wife. So I gave that book to my wife. So at the beginning of our relationship, today is the 21st April. So on the 13th of May, I met my wife 5 years ago. So, and she loves reading, I love reading. So we said, okay, each of us will recommend the other one book that we really love and that we really want the other one to read. And she gave me Sapiens from Yuval Harari. So Yuval Noah Harari. Yeah, I loved it. Great recommendation. And I gave her A New Earth. And after 1 or 2 chapters, she put it away. She didn't get it. She didn't understand it. And 2 to 3 years later, after a lot of input from my side and sending her to some seminars, to workshops, and giving her some other books, she more and more got into that self-awareness about mindfulness and about everything around, just self-awareness, that she read it again and she understood everything, and she could really resonate with that. And so it's just interesting how you need a certain level of awareness to be able to understand it. Otherwise, it's meaningless.
I'm really happy that you brought that up. That's so true. we are all at our own level in our journey. And sometimes it's only when we're there, we're ready for a specific type of information. Yeah.
And you need to read sometimes the same books the same time, several times.
Yeah.
So this book I have probably listened to 3 or 4 times already. And I have a friend who listened to that book 30 times because it's so deep. Yeah,
wow.
30 times. And it just says what great order for what kind of book that is. And the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I probably listened also 3 to 5 times. And so it's another great book is also Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Untethered Soul, also fantastic book.
I'm here taking notes. I'm updating my book list.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for those shares. And let me ask you this question. What's a question that I haven't asked that you believe that everyone needs to know the answer to?
Well, I would say that we should not strive all the time for the goals, but enjoy more the process and be more in the here and now. And have that optimistic attitude towards life, and see the gift and opportunity in any challenge. This was not really a question, but this was my, let's say, the answer to how I live my life. And I don't have any question that could be asked for that. Yeah.
That's
maybe
beautiful.
The question would be, what's the secret of your happiness?
Okay. But I love that you answered. That was even more beautiful, to get that message and to make it so direct. And where can listeners and viewers go if they want to get in touch with you, to learn more about your work and get involved in a lot of the activities that you're organizing here in Shanghai, even if they want to connect with you digitally, if they're not in Shanghai?
Yeah, so maybe a few words of what I'm doing, what my clients normally are, who they are. So I work as an executive coach. So I coach leaders in corporations. I help companies and teams to increase their collaboration level by helping them to better understand conflicts, to have more constructive ways of working with conflicts or to overcome conflicts. And I help leaders to become just better leaders with more psychological safety, to create psychological safety for their teams, to be more self-aware, to become better communicators. And I have a website. That's hcconsulting.com, hc-consulting.com. Then on LinkedIn, of course, Tilman Rieger, you will find me there. And apart from that, I regularly offer webinars on YoPay and Eventbrite. You would find me there. And these webinars are on the topic of passion communication and transactional analysis. So transaction analysis is another topic I work with a lot. It's a psychological framework, and it helps to analyze and impact communication and interaction between human beings to better understand the human behavior. And it's a very powerful concept. And that's what I do, by the way, tonight even, but I think this will be recorded and not be available still today. But I offer that on a regular basis, monthly, and that's something where I can be found. And I also offer positive intelligence courses. This is a very interesting journey of 5 to 6 people for 6 weeks, and they experience a framework of mental fitness. So to become more resilient, more mentally fit, more self-aware, and learn something about their saboteurs, how they can lower the voices of their sabotaging voices, their inner judge, and how they can strengthen that inner sage that leads with empathy, with curiosity, with innovation, or with great ideas, creativity, navigating with purpose, and going into really laser focused action. That is the concept by Shazat Shamin. So you can also find that on positiveintelligence.com.
Thank you so much. I see Tilman has a wealth of knowledge, so I'll leave all that information below for you who are listening and you who are watching to check out. And maybe we'll need to bring him back for another episode to even go deeper in some of those concepts that he's just shared with us today. I just really want to appreciate your presence for being here and creating this conversation. And Tilman, thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Blessed love and respect, champion. Now, this is your high performance coach here, and I want to thank you for showing up today. Not for me, but showing up for yourself. Because every episode of this show is designed to help you get one step closer in the direction of becoming an even higher performing leader. Living in and from your fullest potential in whatever you do, for those you love and for those that you serve. And we are here to help you every step of the way. Now, if you're listening to this show, I believe it's because you are ready to take your performance to another level. And that is why I've created this show as a program in my high performance leader coaching ecosystem to help you master these high performance habits with accountability, structure, and guidance from me as your coach. And it is free for you today as my listener. Join my high performance leader coaching ecosystem right now. Go to levelupwithdino.com. Again, go to levelupwithdino.com. And Dino is spelled D-E-A-N-O. And if you're listening to this in China or you're watching an episode on YouTube, just click the link in the description below. And remember, it is time for you to level up.